Hi, I'm Bert Stephani and I'm in the middle of moving to a new house, but I wanted to make this quick video from my bedroom about a new camera. A little over a week ago, I returned from a short trip to the land of the rising sun. And if you are a Fujifilm fan, you probably know by now that I wasn't in Tokyo with the purpose of just drinking sake and eating sushi, although I did that too. I was invited to be part of the third and final X Summit of 2022. X Summits are basically Fujifilm's version of Apple's keynote events, although not as big, fluid and charismatic as the Apple version. They serve their purpose, announcing and explaining new stuff. The big announcement this time was the camera that a lot of Fuji fans have been waiting for, the X-T5. I was also one of the photographers tasked with making sample pictures and a behind-the-scenes video. As I have been using the X-T5 for a month or two now, and I know a few of you are interested in this camera, I thought I'd share some of my findings and experiences. Don't expect lab tests or spec sheets, there are other people who do that way better than me. See this review from the point of view of a working photographer who has shot more with this camera than most reviewers. Disclaimer, I am a Fujifilm X photographer. I got to travel to Tokyo and I was commissioned to make sample photos and a behind-the-scenes video. But as always, my opinions are my own, and so is this YouTube channel. Fujifilm doesn't even know I'm making this video and I get no compensation whatsoever for making this video. The working title for the campaign for this camera was Back to Photography. Some people found the X-H2S and the X-H2 a bit of a departure from what makes Fujifilm Fujifilm. And you could say that even the X-T4 was a slight deviation from the X-T line with the selfie screen and the bulkier body. I agree with those sentiments to some degree, but I also think it's great to have options to choose the camera that fits your individual needs. Before we move on, I have a confession to make. I never felt deeply enthusiastic about a new X-T camera. I remember clearly during my first meeting with the Fuji team in Tokyo 9 years ago, they proudly presented us with a mock-up of what would eventually become the X-T1. The reaction of the 4 photographers in the room was only lukewarm, to put it mildly. Why choose an SLR style camera over a super sexy rangefinder style camera? Would you choose a Canon AE1 over a Leica M4? But on a practical level, I could see the point of this experiment. The viewfinder in the middle means the center of gravity is also centered, and that matters with the heavier lenses. The design would also allow for a bigger viewfinder and much more. A year later, during my second visit to Japan, we got to test out the just released X-T1, and I had to admit that the engineers and designers were right. It simply was a more practical, all-round camera. With each iteration of the X-T, I went through the same feelings. It starts with limited enthusiasm, and it's only with time that I come to really appreciate the subtle and balanced design. And for sure, it went exactly like that with the X-T5. A quick look at this X-T5 confirms that Fujifilm really wanted to go back to the essence of the X-T series. The selfie screen is gone and we are back to the classic tilt screen that many photographers prefer. While cameras, like cars, always seem to get bulkier and heavier with each iteration, the X-T5 is actually smaller and lighter than its predecessor. But don't let that compact package fool you. The X-T5 packs the same excellent 40 megapixel sensor and the powerful X processor 5 of the X-H2. They even managed to fit IBIS and the bigger battery in this little body as well. In fact, when it comes to specs, the X-T5 is almost identical to the X-H2, just in another form factor. That new sensor is pretty amazing. I've never cared much about megapixels, but I'm not going to say no to some more of them, particularly when they don't come with strings attached. I don't see any real-life downside to the extra pixels. I don't see extra noise, the camera is smooth and fast, and the file sizes are still manageable by my basic MacBook Air or my aging iPad Pro. And the RAW files retain the flexibility that I've come to appreciate so much with the Fujifilm files. Like I said, most of the time I don't need 40 megapixels. But it's still convenient to be able to crop quite a lot tighter than with the 26 megapixel cameras. Sure, it's like a badge of honor to get things right in camera, but in fast situations it's just handy to shoot a little looser, knowing that you will be able to crop later or create different crops for social media from the same image. I bought an X-H2S when it came out, and I'm still very impressed with the autofocus system. I was a bit afraid that the AF on the X-H2 and X-T5 wouldn't be that impressive, but my worries proved to be completely unnecessary. The X-H2S still has the edge, but the AF system of both 40 megapixel cameras is much closer to the X-H2S than to that of the X-T4. In practical use, it's a big step up from the previous generations. For portraiture, I've become to completely trust the face and eye detection even while shooting wide open. Combine it with continuous autofocus and the AF is one less important thing that I have to worry about. I welcome all technological advancements that let me allocate more energy and brain power to the relation with my subjects and less to operating the camera. For stills, I never really felt the need to have in-body image stabilization, but I guess it's one of those things that you just have to use in order to see the benefits. And I certainly saw them. Being able to shoot handheld at often ridiculously slow shutter speeds gives me new options, more situations to confidently shoot in, and new creative paths to explore. Although the tagline for this camera was presented to me as "back to photography", the X-T5 packs some very impressive video features as well. I made many corporate videos, touristic films and other videos with my battered X-T3. But the X-T5 is a big step up in the video department. But if video is your main focus, I think the XH series is probably the better choice. And now the downsides. I couldn't find many, but here are a few. I'm generally not a fan of battery grips, but if I were, the X-T5 would lose some of its appeal. Unlike the previous X-Ts, there will be no optional battery grip for the X-T5. For a battery grip, you'll have to go to the XH line from now on. I love the compactness of the X-T5, but when used with large hands and heavy lenses, the body might actually be a bit on the small side. The compact size also has a bit of an impact on the video feature. I figure it's mainly a matter of heat management. It's always going to be harder to keep such a compact camera from overheating, hence why the X-T5 has a few limitations compared to the X-H2 and 2S when it comes to video. This camera doesn't support the ultra-fast CF Express Type B cards like the X-H2 and 2S. On the other hand, these cards are way more expensive than the SD cards on the X-T5. As a last bit of nitpicking, I'd like to point out that I prefer the softer shutter sound of the X-H2 compared to the X-T5. I have a long history with the X-T line. From the moment I saw the first mock-up of what would become the X-T1, I always saw it as an all-round workhorse camera. I generally love the rangefinder style cameras a touch more, but as a professional photographer, I made much more money with the more versatile X-Ts. But now that we also have the X-H2, the choice for the best all-round pro camera is not so clear for my use. But I guess that's a luxury problem, as both would be excellent options. And there's still nothing wrong with my older Fujifilm cameras. The most important thing is that the releases of the new wave of X cameras, XH2, XH2S and X-T5, tell me that Fujifilm is taking video more seriously. They are committed to keep pushing the technology to new heights, and all that while still remembering where they came from. Conclusion: if you are looking for a compact yet very powerful camera with classic dials, you will be very happy with the X-T5. If you prefer the ergonomics of a DSLR-like body, or if you put a little more emphasis on video, the XH2 might be the better option. If speed and video are what you need, I think the XH2S will be your friend. And if you're a rangefinder style fan, join me in impatiently hoping there will soon be a successor to the X Pro 3 that preferably packs the sensor, processor and feature set of the X-T5. I'll put a link to the X Summit and my behind the scenes video below. My video is about the X-T5 of course, but it's also about my love for portrait photography. If you're interested in how these Fujifilm assignments work and how I approach them, please tell me in the comments and I might make a video about it in the future. That's it for now. I did another little project when I was in Tokyo, but that is for a future video.